Okay, wonderful, dear students. We are going to begin our class today. Please remind that you have to have your cameras on for the entire class. All right, awesome. So let's begin then. Last time we had been studying and learning about the reading section, and we had actually stopped at the fifth question. And now we're going to continue following the same model that we were following last class of learning and studying every single type of question you could possibly find in this section, okay? So let's begin with the presentation then, in order to save the time. Okay, awesome. So we have already seen this one. Okay, so we are now going to begin then with the sixth one. Okay, so this type of question is basically called the detail question. Okay, so the TOEFL detail information questions ask you about information. Ah, yes, yeah, sorry.
You're not seeing it, yeah.
You're okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think that you're not able to see my screen yet. Give me a second. Okay, now I think that you're ready now, right? You're able now, right?
Yes, we can see now.
Okay, awesome. Okay, now, as I was saying, the type of question number 6, it's basically the detail questions. Okay, so the detail questions, as you can see in my screen, ask you about information stated in a very small part of the passage. This is the more objective question in the section. It only asks, what does the passage say about a specific topic? The correct answer does not necessarily have to be written in the exact way as in the paragraph, but it will contain exactly the same information, okay? So let's look to an example, and we are going to understand it more accurately. Okay, so let's read. It says here in our paragraph, paleontologists have argued for a long time that the demise of dinosaurs was caused by climatic alterations associated with the slow changes in the positions of continents and seas resulting from plate tectonics. Of and throughout the Cretaceous, the last period of the Mesozoic era, during which dinosaurs flourished, large shallow seas cover extensive areas of the continents. Data from diverse sources, including geochemical evidence preserved in seafloor sediments, indicate that the late Cretaceous climate was milder than today's. The days were not too hot, nor the nights too cold. The summer were not too warm, the winters not too frigid. The shallow seas on the continents probably buffer the temperature of the nearby air, keeping it relatively constant, okay? So that is basically an example of a paragraph. And now the question will be something like this. These specific detailed questions will be something like this. Which of the following is true of the late Cretaceous climate? So, okay, as you can see, the wording of the question basically suggests you from the beginning that everything you have to do here is to respond to what the paragraph says about a specific topic. And in this case, the topic that we are requested to respond about is, what does the passage say about the Cretaceous climate? Okay, that's it. So let's look at some recommendations. The only thing you must do here is to read all the necessary parts of the paragraph to find the answer. It could be the entire passage or just the relevant portion. Once you found the portion, remind that the correct answer will express the same info. Maybe the words will be different, but the content must be equal. Okay, very important. Wrong answers will typically try to confuse you by linking some ideas found in the passage erroneously. False answers will also use some correct vocabulary from the passage. Okay, but they will not actually respond to the question or will direct it to an irrelevant end. Okay, awesome. So as I was saying, the question is basically saying which of the following is true of the late Cretaceous climate, because as you remind, in this paragraph, the Cretaceous climate was mentioned. There was a specific portion discussing this issue, talking about how was it, more or less the conditions of this climate, etc. So what are the possible answers? The answers could be summers were very warm and winters very cold. Order, shallow seas on the continents caused frequent temperature changes. Could be the climate was very similar to today's climate, or the third could be the climate did not change dramatically from season to season. Okay, so now, what would be a wrong answer here? Well, in this case, right from the beginning, we can discard the third one. Why? Because actually this contradicts what the passage says. If you look at the passage, you're going to find that actually in the late Cretaceous climate, in the late Cretaceous, the climate was milder than today's, right? So as it was milder, well, you should actually not choose that option, right? Because it's actually contradicting what the passage says, because it says that it was it was milder, and given that it was milder, it was not then similar to today's climate, right? What other option could you somehow discard? Well, in this case, you could discard, for example, that summers were very warm and winters very cold, because as I say and I repeat it, this is actually a contradiction, because if you read about it, the Cretaceous climate had the somehow quality or the characteristics that summers were not too warm nor winters too frigid. You are going to know that by reading to the paragraph, right? Now, what would be the correct answer then? The correct answer in this case would be certainly that the climate did not change dramatically from season to season. How can you know that? Well, as I say, you can basically go about reading the entire passage or the entire paragraph until you find the specific sentence or the specific portion that speaks about that specific topic you are requested. In this case, I think that the answer it's easy to find for this paragraph in the last sentence of the paragraph, because it says that the shallow seas on the continents probably buffered the temperature of the nearby air, keeping it relatively constant. Okay, so and actually you could find it as well in the previous sentence when it says that days were not too hot nor nights too cold, that actually the summers were not too warm nor the winters too frigid. It gives you some sort of sensation that the climate, well, not sensation, it actually gives you the certainty, right, that the climate did not change dramatically from season to season. That is what you can talked about, or that is what the paragraph actually suggests in this case. Okay, so is there any question about this? Any question about this specific type of question? I think it's very clear what you have to do. Simply, it's actually the most basic type of question, right? It's the question I think we are used to. Specifically, we are, especially if we are from South America, in every type of exam when we are in high school or when we are in the university, most of the questions are about that, right? Are about what did the book you were reading say, what does the paragraph you have received say about this specific topic, right? Normal questions. So basically, the detailed question, it's something about that. It's finding the answer in the paragraph, responding. Awesome. So let's move on to the next one.
So here,
Oh yeah.
a correct answer.
Here, the correct answer would be the fourth one. That the climate did not change dramatically from season to season. And you can know that by looking at the fact that here in the paragraph, it was mentioned that there was no a variation of the temperature of days, of the different seasons, right? That seasons were not too warm, nor they were too cold, right? And if they were, for example, something very changeable and they would have changed dramatically, then, for example, winters would have been super cold, right? And warm climates, for example, in the summer, the days would have been super warm. And if the passage or if the paragraph would have pointed to that specific situation, then you have responded something different. But given that it says that all the seasons were not too nor too warm nor too cold, then you can certainly know that the climate was actually very, very stable. Okay, that it did not change dramatically from season to season. That is what you are informed about this paragraph. Okay, so that will be the correct answer here. Will be the fourth one. But as I say, obviously the questions are going to change always, and what you have to do is simply in this case, when you receive this type of question, it's simply to find the information in the passage. Okay, not difficult. So I hope that I responded. Moving on then to the seventh one. In this case, we have the negative factual information question. Okay, so this type of question will ask you to identify, I'm sorry, something that is textually stated in the passage. In order to complete this task appropriately, you must read the entire portion. You're required to, and to pay attention to all details. Okay, so let's look at an example, and later we're going to have the opportunity to see. Okay, oh, I wanted to say actually, before we move on, that if somebody has some difficulty in understanding what I'm saying in English, please raise your hand and let's try to explain that as well in Spanish so that everything is clear to you. Because that is objective, right? I mean, the classes are in English for the obvious purpose that you have to practice your listening and also your speaking. Nevertheless, something very important for us as well is for you to understand, is that for you to understand all the content, maybe you need some clarification in Spanish. And if you need it, please tell me and I will gladly collaborate you in Spanish as well, okay? Moving on then, let's read the following passage as an example of this negative factual questions, okay? So let's say, dissatisfaction with conventional explanations for dinosaur extinctions led to a surprising observation that, in turn, has suggested a new hypothesis. Many plants and animals disappear abruptly from the fossil record as one moves from layers of rock documenting the end of the Cretaceous up into rocks representing the beginning of the Cenozoic, the era after the Mesozoic. Between the last layer of Cretaceous rock and the first layer of Cenozoic rock, there is often a thin layer of clay. Pay attention to that. Scientists felt that they could get an idea of how long the extinctions took by determining how long it took to deposit this 1 centimeter of clay, and they thought they could determine the time it took to deposit the clay by determining the amount of the element iridium it contained. So that would be the passage. Now, the wording of the question, of this type of question, would be something like this. In paragraph 4, all the following questions are answered except, that's the reason why it is called negative factual questions. Because when you are reading the paragraph, you are going to, I mean, this is something very common, right? In a scientific discussion, in a scientific document, in a scientific article, there are many questions and concerns responded, right? Because that is what science does. Science, as a method, simply tries to serve human beings in order to respond to some questions, right, that we may have. So that's the reason why in scientific discussions, you're always going to have responses to different issues. Nevertheless, in this specific paragraph, there is a topic that we're going to read now the possible responses that is not discussed. There is simply not a single line, not a single sentence discussing that topic. And that specific response is the one you want to choose, the one or the topic that is not mentioned at all here, the one that has no a sentence or a textual basis in order for you to know that is the case. Okay, so let's look at the responses. It says, why is there a layer of clay between the rocks of the Cretaceous and Cenozoic? Why were scientists interested in determining how long it took to deposit the layer of clay at the end of the Cretaceous? What was the effect of the surprising observation scientists made? Why did scientists want more information about the dinosaur extinction at the end of the Cretaceous? So something or one statement or one topic out of these 4 topics was not mentioned here in the passage, and there is no a single line or sentence giving you information about that. So you have to identify that option and choose it, because that will be the correct answer. All the following questions are answered in the paragraph except one of those. So let's look at some recommendations. Read the entire portion you are required to while paying attention to every detail. Afterwards, do not forget that the correct answer must not be textually stated in the paragraph. That is what you're looking for in this case, that the correct answer is not going to be textually stated in the paragraph. Maybe you can infer it, but in this case, it's not recommendable for you to infer in any case, okay? Because what you have to do here is to concentrate and focus on the textual basis in order to respond every question. If it is not somehow justified or founded upon a textual basis, then that is the correct answer because the text does not mention it, the text does not speak about it. Some answers may be rationally inferred from the passage, but this doesn't collaborate to respond. Focus on textual absences. Look for what is not in the text. Okay, so that is what you have to do in this specific type of question. Now, out of all these possible answers, which would be the correct one? Does somebody have an idea? Which would be the correct one? I had to say that in this case, it's very difficult. And well, this is actually, I think, the difficulty of this specific type of question, because all of these things, except one, are responded in the paragraph, and you have to identify that one. Let's examine every single one of them. For example, the first one, it says, why is there a layer of clay between the rocks of the Cretaceous and Cenozoic? I ask you, for example, do you see or have you been able to identify any sentence or any line in our paragraph, any textual basis or any textual justification in order to respond to this question? Why is there a layer of clay between the rocks of the Cretaceous and Cenozoic? Remind that the question why basically it's asking you or is questioning you in order for you to respond, what is the cause of the layer of clay being there in the Cretaceous? Is there any line in the paragraph suggesting why is there, what is the cause? For example, if you read, you're going to find that it says between the last layer of Cretaceous rock and the first layer of Cenozoic rock, there is often a thin layer of clay. Scientists felt that they could get an idea of how long the extinctions took by determining how long it took to deposit this 1 centimeter of clay, and they thought they could determine the time it took to deposit the clay by determining the amount of the element iridium it contained. If you look at the paragraph, there is no a single line, sentence, somehow giving you an idea why is there a layer of clay. It responds about several aspects of the layer of clay. It talks about how is it that this layer of clay is important for scientists to determine what is it? To determine how long the extinctions took place, or when the extinctions took place, in order to translate it now. It talks about how so that they can measure, for example, how long it took for this layer of clay to be inserted to this to this material or to this part of the earth. It talks about that, how much time it took it to deposit the clay by determining the amount of the element iridium, but it doesn't mention why is there. It doesn't give any sort of explanation. Why is there in the first place a layer of clay between the rocks of the Cretaceous and the Cenozoic? If you read it, you're not going to find any single line talking about that. So this will be the correct answer. Actually, the first one. Why? Because there is no a line, no a single sentence explaining why is there a layer of clay. It talks about what this layer of clay is useful for. It talks about how can you measure it. It talks about iridium, because this layer of clay contains iridium apparently, but it never mentions why is that between this layer, between these two Cretaceous rocks and between these two Cenozoic rocks. It never mentions that. Is that clear? Why this would be the correct answer? Because it never mentions why is there a layer of clay. And all the rest of the possible answers, there is something in the paragraph in order to sustain that. There is something talking about that, or at least suggesting you that. But there's nothing textually here talking about why is there a layer of clay. Is that clear? Or is there any question in this? A specific narrative question? I think it's very clear what you have to do. Simply looking for something that has no basis, has no textual basis. If the text does not mention it, then that is your correct answer, because it answers all the possible options except one. All right. So if there are no questions, I'm going to move on. That's what you have to do. And if you analyze, basically, for example, let's analyze just one other possible answer. The second one, let us say. Why were scientists interested in determining how long it took to deposit a layer of clay at the end of the Cretaceous? It says, right, why they were interested, because they thought they could get an idea of how long the extinctions took. That is to say, they believed, or they were interested in knowing how much or how long it took to deposit the layer of clay, because they thought that if they somehow investigated about that specific topic related to the layer of clay, then they would know about how long it took for the dinosaurs to be extincted. That is what they, or excuse me, well, the not the dinosaurs in this case. It is plants and animals. Why all these plants and animals disappear? Right. That is the reason why they were super interested in knowing how long it took for this layer of clay to be deposited in the layer of clay. For example, mentions. Therefore, it's not the correct answer because it is mentioned in the paragraph. There is something somehow explaining you the reason or talking about that topic, so it is not the correct answer. Nevertheless, coming back to our first response, there is any single sentence talking about why is there a layer of clay. Never explains that. It just talks about, as I said, the benefits of that layer, how to measure it, why they were interested, but never mentions why is there the cause of that. Never. Okay, so that is the correct answer because it talks about everything except that. Yes, Jelly? Jelly, excuse me.
Yes. I didn't get what was the recommendation when we have these negative factual questions. What is the recommendation in order to answer correctly this question?
Right, for sure. Let's go back then. So what you have to do is first of all to read the entire portion. You're required to, while paying attention to every detail. Okay, so you have to read all the paragraph you're requested to, because you're always going to be somehow directed to the paragraph. If you read the question, it says in paragraph 4, so you go to paragraph 4 and you read it, right? So the first thing you have to do is you read it, paying attention to details. Now, afterwards, do not forget that the correct answer must not be textually stated in a paragraph. That is my best recommendation. That you have to look for textual absences. What do I mean by this? That in the paragraph, there must not be a sentence or a line explaining about that topic that you want to choose. For example, in our case, there's no a sentence, nor there is any type of line talking about why is there a layer of clay. Therefore, that is our correct answer, because there is an absence of an explanation textually, that is to say, part of the text explaining why is there a layer of clay. Maybe there is an explanation out of our text. Maybe scientists have already discovered why is there a layer of clay, but it's not in our paragraph. Therefore, it's our correct answer because it is not answered in our paragraph. That is my recommendation, to read and to look for the absences in the text. If there is an absence in your text, talking about, in our example, right, talking about why is there a layer of clay, then you have to choose the answer, to choose that answer, because there is an absence about that specific answer. And you know then that if there is an absence, that is to say, the paragraph does not speak about that, then you know that is your correct answer. Is that clear now, Jelly?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, okay. So that is what you have to do here, always to look for what is not in the text. So now let's move on to the type of question number 8. This is the reading summary question. Okay, so this type of question, the reading summary question, asks you to select 3 or more statements that summarize, pay attention to this, the main ideas within the entire passage. The main ideas within the entire passage. This will typically be your last question, okay? Remember, there are 10 questions, and out of those 10 questions, the last one is always going to be this one, the summary question. So you must respond, or this question must be responded with all the information you've grabbed from the passage, and this must be always at the end of your 10 questions. That is to say, you must respond to this question not as your first question responded or as your first responded question, but you must respond this question always at the end. That is to say, leave it to the end. And it's always going to be your end because, as I say, it's your 10th question, okay? This is going to be your last question always, the summary question. So in this case, I have no an example here because if you pay attention, in order to respond to this question, you will have to read an entire passage, okay? So, and if we read an entire passage, we're going to be the entire class talking about that. So everything I want you to comprehend here is how this question will look like. If you look at my screen right now, you can see that it is going to look something like this. It's going to be more or less a box at the center of your screen. And what you're going to do is to drag, I'm going to show you here, this is a video actually. You are going to drag all those statements within this box that summarize the main ideas of the passage. That is everything you have to do. Okay? That is what you have to do. You have to look at your statements, that is to this specific summaries or these specific ideas below your box. You're going to read them, and if one of those statements or ideas expresses one of the main elements and discussions within your paragraph, or excuse me, within your passage, then you drag it to your box, and that is going to be your correct answer. Now let's look at some recommendations. This question will require you to drag your answer to a reply box, to a reply box. You are not required to click on your answer. Remind that in all the other cases, you have to click on your answer, but nevertheless, you have to drag it here within your box. Don't forget this question, it's worth several points, okay? This is worth more than the other questions. This is not a conventional question. This is a question that it's super important and it's very valuable, okay? It's very valuable for you because you are going to have many points for this answer to get if you responded correctly, okay? So you have to pay attention and try to respond correctly. So don't forget this question is worth several points, and you should respond it once you have responded all the other questions. That is to say, don't go clicking on the button of next and next and next and next and next until you come to this question and try to respond this question first. No, what you have to do is always to respond this question at the end of all your other questions. That is to say, respond your first 9 questions first, and later at the end, come back to this one in order to respond it, because as I say, it asks you to summarize the main ideas of the entire passage. Now, in order to correctly choose your answers, you must be very precise in choosing only those answers conveying the central ideas of the passage, not those which began it, not those that ended it, not those most unperceivable details, that is to say, those details that are irrelevant but are mentioned anyways in the paragraph, not the part you remind the most, that is very important, but you must choose those answers that have triggered all discussions and data. You know what triggers means, right? Triggers basically means to provoke something. That is to say, provocar, causar. Okay, that is el detonante, lo que detona. All the discussions and the data within your passage. Those are the main ideas, the ones that trigger everything, the ones that trigger discussions. You must choose those conveying the topic that all the rest round about. Okay, so those are my recommendations. Something very important to pay attention to is when I say, for example, you must not choose the part you remind the most, because it happened to me, for example, when I was practicing for this section, that when I was reading a paragraph, it very often it happened to me that when I was reading, there was a specific portion that caught my attention because it was something funny, maybe something that I reminded easily, or maybe something that I knew previously about, and somehow that remain attached to my mind. I reminded. Nevertheless, not because I reminded the most, or I reminded more than other parts or elements in the passage, that means that is the correct answer. No, it is the correct answer only if it is the main idea, only if it triggers the discussion, only if it provokes the discussion, only if all the rest of elements surround that specific idea. That is what you have to choose. So when you see this specific question, I'm going to repeat, you simply have to read your possible answers that are going to be below your box, as you can see here, and you have to drag them. Every single one of them, it's going to be an idea. And if it is a main idea, you drag it to your box, and then you are done, okay? Is there any question about this type of question, the summary question? No? Any question about this? Okay. because you understood. So this is what you have to do here in this summary question. Okay, so this would be the question number 9. It says standard, but it's a mistake. It's the question type number 9. Okay. This is the sentence insertion question. This is a very funny question to respond to. So it says, this question will ask you to insert an extra sentence to one of the passages you have read. Okay, so this is the insertion question. That's what it's called, insertion, because you have to insert an extra sentence to one of the passages you have read. When you click on one of the answers, the software will display a preview of how would the sentence look in the tentative place you are placing it into. Okay, so let's look at an example. I'm going to read this entire passage. Pay attention to it, answer it, and then I'm going to explain how to respond effectively to this question. Let's read. It says, air has not been common on Earth's surface, since the very beginning of the planet's history. Because it usually exists in a metallic state, it was preferentially incorporated in Earth's core as the planet cooled and consolidated. Air is found in high concentrations in some meteorites, in which the solar system's original chemical composition is preserved. Even today, microscopic meteorites continually bombard the Earth, falling on both land and sea. By measuring how many of these meteorites fall to Earth over a given period of time, scientists can estimate how long it might have taken to deposit the observed amount of air in the boundary clay. Okay, so later it says, these calculations suggest that a period of about 1 million years would have been required. However, older reliable evidence suggests that the deposition of the boundary clay could not have taken 1 million years. So the unusually high concentration of air seems to require a special explanation. So that's a paragraph. So notice that in our paragraph, there are some letters highlighted with yellow. And this is going to be something very similar to what you're going to see on your screen in the actual test, because you're going to have a paragraph, and in some spots of that paragraph, in some parts of that paragraph, commonly at the beginning of a sentence or after or at the end of a sentence, you're going to receive a space. That is what those letters mean, and a space in which you could insert a sentence that they are going to give you for you to insert somewhere. And what you have to do is to decide where to insert it. That's everything you have to do in this case. Okay, so before we see the answers, let's look at some recommendations. So for these insertion questions, your objective is to find where can the rendered sentence best fit in the paragraph. Sometimes it will be evident to you because something will appear to lack in the paragraph. In our example, that phrase or that sentence that we have to insert is this one in the left side of my screen. If you see on the left side of my screen, it says, consequently, the idea that the air in the boundary claim came from microscopic meteorites cannot be accepted. That is the sentence you have to insert somewhere in one of those specific locations you are offered to. You have to choose one of those, and you have to basically, as I say, put it, or well, you have to press in the actual test. You have to press, let us say, A. If you believe that the spot A is where this sentence corresponds to, you will have to press it, and then you will have your sentence put there. Okay, so that is what you have to do. So now I will continue. Sometimes it will be evident to you where you should put your sentence into because something will appear to lack in the paragraph. Likewise, paragraphs often sustain themselves without the alluded sentence. So, okay, so you're going to have two possible scenarios. The first one could be that it's super easy for you to know where the sentence is going to fit appropriately. Why? Because you are going to know when you're reading the paragraph that something lacks to your paragraph. And then you know, well, therefore, okay, if something lacks here, well, obviously your sentence is going to complement that absence there, and you know that that is a correct answer. But sometimes the paragraph can sustain themselves without the alluded sentence. That is to say, they don't need the sentence to make sense. You're not going to be able to know if there is something lacking. So when this happens, you will sometimes have to find where does the sentence complement the paragraph harmonically. If it is not filling an absence, it is going to complement. Okay, so when this happens, you have to be aware of those two scenarios. First one, you could maybe receive a portion that is lacking in sentence, so you insert your sentence there. Or it could be the other case that you could simply complement your paragraph by inserting your phrase or your sentence somewhere. Those are your two scenarios. So in order to correctly choose your answers, you must choose a place within the paragraph where your sentence does not repeat already mentioned information that is important to you. Okay, so you're not going to put your sentence to a place where you know that information has already been mentioned, or where you could perceive maybe it is repetitive. Do not put it there. That is not where it belongs to. Okay. Also, moreover, where it doesn't disrupt the reasoning train of the portion, that is to say, where you notice that your sentence does not disrupt, that is to say, does not stop or does not refrain the general idea of the paragraph to continue, then you know that that is certainly a good place. But if it sometimes it somehow it provokes difficulty for you to follow the idea of the paragraph, if you insert your sentence to that specific place, that is not your place, because it is disrupting, it is somehow harming or hurting the reasoning train. And the reasoning train, or the idea of the passage, is everything, right? Because if you not follow that reasoning train, then you are going to have incoherences. You're going to have a text that does not make sense. Okay, so if your sentence disrupts some part of the paragraph, you should not put it there. So your objective will always to be, as I said, to fill something, a missing part, or to complement the text where it allows you to do it harmonically. So in this case, where would this sentence that we have to insert somewhere would better fit? What is the spot? Remind our spots or our possible places are our letters A, B, C, or D. Where could this sentence best fit into? Could be in A, in B, in C, or in D. Okay, Carlos, you have the answer.
I would say that in letter C.
Okay, letter C. Does somebody have any other opinion, or do you agree that it is?
I will say B.
You would say what? Excuse me, D?
B.
B. Okay, all right. Maybe another person? Right, so in order to release the correct answer, let us first read the passage again from the sentence that it says by measuring how many, no, from the sentence that it says even today. We're going to begin from there, here in the middle. Even today, microscopic meteorites continually bombard the earth. And we are going to know more or less what is the reasoning train, because remember, my recommendations are that we should not put the sentence to a place where it disrupts the reasoning train or the idea of the passage. Okay, so let's read. It says, even today, microscopic meteorites continually bombard the earth, falling on both land and sea. Okay, that's what happens. Today, there are some meteorites that continually fall down to the earth, whether on the sea or on the land. So by measuring how many of these meteorites fall to Earth over a given period of time, scientists can estimate, again, I'm gonna repeat that, by measuring how many of these meteorites fall to Earth over a given period of time, scientists can estimate how long it might have taken to deposit the observed amount of air in the boundary clay. These calculations suggest that a period of about 1 million years would have been required in order to fill this boundary clay with that element that is contained in the meteorites, that is air, right? It says, however, other reliable evidence suggests that the deposition of the boundary clay could not have taken 1 million years. So the unusually high concentration of air seems to require a special explanation. Okay, so so what is the idea here? What is the reasoning train? The reasoning train is that we have a boundary claim with a lot of air, that element that is found in meteorites, and scientists know that those meteorites fall down to the earth in a given period of time, and they can measure how much time would it have required for all those meteorites to fall down on the earth and to fill our boundary clay with that element. And they have made their calculations, and they know that it would have required at least 1 million years. But nevertheless, they know what? That the deposition of the boundary could not have taken 1 million years. Okay? I mean, remind that what they are trying to do here is to postulate a theory. They are saying, okay, we want to explain why is there so much air in our boundary clay. One possible option is that it comes from the meteorites. Nevertheless, they say it cannot be because of the meteorites, because that 1 million year that they will require in order to fill the earth with that element is not possible. We know that actually it could not have been, or it could not have taken 1 million years. So they are saying that this hypothesis does not work. It doesn't help to explain why is there so much air in our boundary clay. So the correct portion where this goes would be the option C, as was Carlos remarking. Why? Because you see that when the sentence, however, all the reliable evidence suggests that the position of the boundary clay could not have taken 1 million years, that is basically like the sentence that is eliminating the possibility of the meteorites being the correct hypothesis. It is eliminating that possibility. Okay, this sentence is basically the final verdict that it's saying, okay, this is not the correct hypothesis. Therefore, the sentence would fit very good there, because what does our sentence do? Our sentence basically says, consequently, the idea that air in the boundary clay came from microscopic meteorites cannot be accepted. Okay, that is the idea. It is basically, as I say, giving the verdict. It's saying, no, this is not possible. So therefore, it is in option C where that fits, because it is, as I say, it is terminating with that possibility. This hypothesis does not work. And later, it says, so the unusually high concentration must be explained otherwise. It must be explained with other possible hypothesis. It requires a special explanation. So that is where our sentence would fit best, or the better. Does somebody have any questions? Or is it correct? So what you have to do, as I said, it's basically to follow the reasoning train, as we have done here. Reason, and when you find where would this fit the better, then you put it there. In this case would be option C, but I admit that option B was actually very possible. Nevertheless, it makes more sense. As I say, it doesn't disrupt anything. Look at my recommendation. It doesn't disrupt anything, but it complements. Because when you look at this, if you put the sentence in the spot C, it complements the idea that it could not have taken 1 million years. Therefore, or consequently, the idea that the air boundary claim came from microscopic meteorites cannot be accepted. It is complementing the claim that it could not have taken 1 million years for these meteorites to fill the earth with that element. Okay. Okay, so moving on then to the next question, to the next type of question, and the last one. This question will ask you to organize the ideas in certain categories with relationships. You will have to drag the answers which you believe correspond to the category boxes you will have. Commonly, you will be able to drag 2 of these sentences within each box. Okay. In this case, I don't have an example as well. Why? Because in this case, you have to read the entire passage as well in order to respond to this question. But I want you to understand how it looks like and how do you have to approach this question. So basically, what you're going to be requested to do is that you have to ask in the summary questions. You remind the summary questions, right? The one that you had to drag the response, like this one. You're going to have 2 boxes, not just one in this case. You're going to have 2 boxes, as you can see here in my on the left side of my screen. you're going to have two boxes, and each of these boxes is going to have a category. It's going to have a category about something that was mentioned in your paragraph or in your passage. In this case, for example, it says fauna analysis in Cuba and California. This is one category. From the passage, I extracted this example, right? And the other category in the other box will be radiocarbon dating in Two Creeks fossil forest. Okay, so those would be your categories. What you have to do here, it's basically to read the statements, and if you know, and having read, right, the paragraph or the passage, and if you know that one of these statements corresponds to one of those categories, then you should drag that response within your box. That's what you have. That is what you have to do. I want to give you an example. I remind, having read the paragraph or the passage from which I derived this example, that tar and benzene are used in the analytical process of what? In the analytical process of analysis, of fauna analysis that was made in Cuba and California. So given that I know that this fauna analysis in Cuba, I'm sorry, somebody wants to say something? Okay, it's Carolina, I think. Okay, well, as I was saying, so what you have to do basically is to drag the statement that you know corresponds to that category. I know for sure, having read the paragraph, that this specific sentence has a relationship with this category because these elements or these substances were utilized in the fauna analysis in Cuba and California. That is what the passage that I read was about. So I know that I will have to drag this answer to my box, and that would be that. Then I would have responded to the question. Actually, if you look at my recommendations, you're going to be able to fill each box with two answers. Okay, so your objective in this question is to fill both boxes where you will be provided with. You must fill them with those statements that consistently and meaningfully relate to the proposed categories. These categories will vary throughout your paragraphs, but the topics will always be related to your current paragraph. In order to correctly choose your answers, you must fill each box with those sentences that best correspond, each of them with information signal in the passage. Wrong answers typically convey wrong information or data that simply simply has not been exposed in the paragraph like that. Okay, so as I say, what you have to do is basically to drag two of these statements within each box, and your statements have to have a relationship, or must have a relationship with that category stated here at the beginning of your box, or in one of the boxes, okay, that you have here on your screen. Is there any question about this one? Any question about this? No questions? All right.
No, teacher, it's all clear.
Okay, awesome. So that would be, as you can see, well, don't forget to practice, and you can send me a WhatsApp message whenever you want. I will respond as fast as I'm available. Okay, so there you have my cell phone. And well, you know that this section is about practice. Something that I will do after we finish, after I finish my classes, because I have more classes after this one. After I finish my classes, I'm gonna send you an application that I downloaded when I was practicing for my TOEFL some years ago. And this application that you can download on the Google App Store, it's basically an application that has a lot of practices, of reading practices, and you can basically read all the paragraphs or the passages they offer you, and you can respond to the questions in the exact manner that you would do if you were taking your actual exam. Okay, so that is going to help you a lot. It has a lot of exercises, and you're going to be able to practice a lot with updated questions, because you remind that as the TOEFL, it's something that has been existing for so long time. There have been a lot of versions of this section. Nevertheless, this application that I'm going to send you has the uploaded version of the questions. Okay, so you're going to be able to practice a lot, quite a lot. Okay, that is what I'm going to do after I finish this. Okay, so please fill the poll that I have launched right now, and you're going to be able to leave after we complete that, please. Okay.
Good evening, teacher.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, teacher. Thank you.
All right, bye. See ya.